Hey, we're Sunflower Bean, and you're watching Austin Undergrounds.
Hi everyone, I'm Olympia with Austin Underground. We're here with Sunflower Bean. How are you?
Good. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Okay, so my first question is about your new album. Obviously, a lot of people say it's very different from your first one. I was just curious, like, how did the conception start? Like, how do you know what the album's gonna sound like? Because I know you said you got inspiration from talking to a lot of people, like the fans especially. How did you decide, like, this is what we're gonna input into our album?
I think for us it kind of starts with like kind of just a feeling of wanting to move forward in some sort of way, and then I think we just start playing and start writing stuff and start getting these sounds, and then there's definitely a moment when you realize you have something and you can kind of follow that line till the end, you know. But it doesn't all happen at once.
Yeah, and I think you actually would probably have a good answer for this, because when I think about 22 in Blue, I think about a lot of, it kind of started with the guitar, which Nick brought in.
Yeah, around like January of 2017 when we started working on the record, I made like all these different rules for myself about like, you know, like kind of like hardline things to sort of run in the opposite direction of what we had been doing for the last 2 years touring our first record. And it kind of made things interesting, and we all got some new gear and like started playing around with different sort of influences and sounds, and we worked quick and it kind of came naturally. You don't really think about it and it kind of sneaks up on you and you're like, oh, this is kind of coming together to be like the sound that we're working with.
I agree.
Good to know. Thank you. Also, so a lot of people have commented that this album sounds a lot more political, a lot more like a protest album, you said. I was wondering if you were ever afraid to take that political direction. I know you started your organization. What is it called? It's called Anger Can Be Power. And I feel like a lot of bands are afraid to be political, so I was wondering, were you ever wary of doing that, going in that direction at all?
I think it's interesting that people think it's a protest record. I think, which isn't necessarily false. One thing I think that we try to do with our lives and our music, and something that we hope for in general, is to maybe inspire people to involve activism into their lives. So the only song that is absolutely directly about protest, I would say, is probably Crisis Fest, even though it's like sprinkled throughout the rest of the record. But it's interesting that even having one song on your record that takes a stance can make the record be perceived as a protest record, which I think is really interesting. As far as being afraid to be politically inspired or let it inspire your creativity, I would say that we've never been afraid of it. The only thing I think we think about is that music is often like a refuge from the realities of the world, which are often very painful. The news cycle is very painful. And I think it's something we thought about with the record is you know, and what artists think about with their art is like, do I need to do this? Do I have a responsibility to do this? What are my responsibilities as a person that is in public at all? And that's different for each person. That's different for each artist and for each time. But I think the group that I started, which at this point is not an organization, but it's more experimental, is following that same line, where I think to us personally, letting your political interests or your activism interests be at the forefront of your life, as is seeing your friends and you know, watching TV and voting and all of those things being equally important. I think that that's something that I strive for with a group and something that we strive for with ourselves. And by doing it with ourselves, we hope it might inspire some other people to do the same.
Yeah, I think no matter what you do, all art is going to be political, and it's always going to be reflective of the time it's made. So it's, addressing it directly on a song like Crisis Fest sort of felt, we weren't scared to do it, and it was the last song we wrote lyrics for, and we were like, there's a lot of underlying themes on this record that have to do with what's going on. Let's just directly address it on one song, because sometimes it can be cathartic.
Yeah, for sure. Did you have anything?
I was going to say kind of a similar thing. It's never, I think we were ever scared of it, but you definitely want to make sure that you do it in the right way, so you're not, because like what Nick said, you still want it to be cathartic and like a release and emotional and something that you can still use to, cope with reality, which is, because I think some people get scared of like protest songs, like, oh, it's just gonna, it's not fun, like Crisis Fest, it's still a fun song, which is like, it's fun and you can yell along to it and it'll still, bring you that feeling, and I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to take it back to when you first started. You described the NYC DIY scene as primarily shoegaze, dream pop, and I think, Nick, you even said it was boring. Do you hate shoegaze?
Do you hate
shoegaze? No, I love shoe. What the thing was, there was a lot of like sort of like uniformness going on in the scene back in maybe like 2013. And of course, it was all music that I loved, music that I grew up listening to. Like, we all were huge fans of Captured Tracks and the bands that came out on that label. And we just wanted to do the exact opposite of what everyone was doing. And I always resort to the example that, like, doing a traditional, like, sort of guitar solo was, like, the most uncool thing you could do. Like, the coolest thing would be to just, like really like have like a lot of delay and a lot of like chorus and like sort of just make like this like droney sort of like soundscape sort of thing, and like to like actually like have a guitar solo on a song was sort of like unique compared to unique and uncool compared to like what a lot of bands were going for. Things as simple as like just like wearing something that you wouldn't wear on the street. Like incorporating any element of theater into your show was considered really uncool.
Yeah, I think we kind of even owe it to that, owe it to all the shoegaze, because it gave us kind of this opportunity to carve out our own path and kind of decide what we wanted to do, because I don't think it's really like, well, we never want to do what everyone else is doing, and the fact that I feel like everyone was just so into that, and it seemed so like the obvious thing to do, and because it I feel like just is, I don't know, just easily, felt good, and a lot of the bands were really good, but it's a thing like, well, we gotta do something different. We gotta carve out our own path here, and and push this forward a little bit.
Yeah. And there's undoubtedly a lot of shoegaze and dream pop influence in our music anyway. So
yeah, I've read that some people hear a shoegaze influence on your music, which I think is interesting. But I mean, you said it's there, so it's true.
It's definitely there.
Do you think it's different now, or do you think it's all the same again?
It's hard to know, because the scene has struggled with so many venue closings, and also our inability to be in the city because we're on tour so much makes it so that I feel like right now we wouldn't be the DIY experts of New York City because we're just not there. But there are a lot of cool venues opening, and that's the cool thing about DIY, is that it's a spirit. It's not a location. It lives inside of anyone who really wants to do it. So musically, I would say musically, I think the trends are like, I don't know. I don't. Maybe a little more. I think a little more emo. I think like emo resurgence is big, like soft emo, which is really a lot of it can be very good, you know.
And you were talking about like even wearing pieces that like you wouldn't normally wear every day. So I wanted to ask you about like how big of an impact is fashion on your, I guess, I don't know, musical endeavors or anything, because obviously you all dress great. So I was wondering, like, how do you think it's important to the band at all, if it is?
Yeah, I think the way that we always talk about it is that that style is important. I think style is important to, you know, any band, and to us, it's we all have like our own individual style, and it's something like when we try to get like more uniform within ourselves, it doesn't ever work, because I think we're all individuals, and that always comes out in its own way. But I think fashion is obviously the commerce of style, and that word is really intense. And when you bring art in a different way into it, it's just like, I think we think of it more as our style, and none of our clothes are very expensive, but it's cool that we're able to like thrift around the United States, because it's like you go to one city and you find something, you find that little thing you need, and then you're able to do it somewhere else, and you're like kind of putting it together. So I think it's how we it's a little bit of art that you get to express every day just by making your way through the world, and sometimes it's like its own kind of rebellion as you're making your way through, a gas station with like, Second Amendment signs everywhere, and you look like a scraggly like New Yorker. It's identity.
Yeah, and it's another creative outlet, and being in a band, you find out that there's so much more than just the music. There are so many aspects of creativity that you have to do, from music videos to artwork to even merch. I feel like sometimes we're running like a small streetwear label.
Because you're creating
Everything.
a world.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing, because when when I think about some of my favorite bands, like especially like take Devo, the depth in which you can love them for beyond the music, which is amazing, but what they were so dedicated to visually is so, the art is so strong that it's enough that you can subside on it. You know what I mean? And I think that's something for any artist to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, and I only have one more question for you, my last question. What is your favorite song to play live?
Here, do you want to go first?
It's funny, they all have their moments. It's kind of like, it's a funny thing when you play songs every night for a long period of time, because you really, at least for me, it's just crazy how much your mind wanders or doesn't wander, or what you're thinking about, what you're looking forward to, like if you're looking forward to like literally the next like snare hit, or if you're looking forward to like what you're gonna eat later that night. So it's kind of like I don't know, I think lately I've been really we've been opening up I Was a Fool a little bit and jamming at the end, and I've been really enjoying that, because it's fun, because we can kind of do different stuff every night and really kind of dig into that. But yeah, I don't know, I love playing Only a Moment. Yeah, it's just all kind of just depends.
Like we have a song called Human 4, which I really love playing live, but the thing is, like, the bass tone is really hard to get, and often it doesn't work. And then last night when we played it, it like worked the most sound-wise from where I've ever felt it had. And I was like, I think that was my favorite one to play last night. It's like every room, every day can change it. But I'm gonna say officially, my current favorite is Harvest Moon, this cover we do by Neil Young, because it's currently out of this set, which means that like when it will come along, it'll be like, you know, it's like dessert.
Yeah.
And it's like when we nail it, we really are able to do something special with it. So it has like it has a special place in my heart. So that one's my current favorite.
We've been playing I Was Home pretty consistently, like at every single show since we wrote it. And we usually play it towards the end. It's either the last song or like one of the very last songs, and people always really get excited when we do it because it's sort of like a crowd favorite, I think. So I'll go with I Was Home.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I really loved our conversation. This is Olympia with Sunflower Bean at Austin Underground. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to follow them on Instagram, YouTube, and check them out everywhere you can. And don't forget to follow Austin Underground on YouTube too, and we have our own website. So thank you again. We'll see you next time. Bye.